Fred MacMurray built his fortune carefully. He owned apartment buildings, a cattle ranch, and a knitting mill. He packed hard-boiled eggs in brown bags while earning millions. But in the middle of his success, a legal battle with powerful people changed everything. Studios had been watching him negotiate for years. They didn't like how much power he held. So they made a move that was supposed to bring him down. What they didn't know was how far MacMurray would go to protect himself. The fight pushed him out of Hollywood for years. The real story involves contracts, betrayal, and a plan that backfired in ways no one saw coming. Fred MacMurray's story begins quietly, almost softly, in a place most people barely remember. He was born on August 30th, 1908, in Kankakee, Illinois, to a father who could make a violin sing and a mother who carried Wisconsin roots with her everywhere she went. Even though his father was talented, money never stayed long in their house. When Fred was only 2, the family moved to Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, hoping for better days. But life there pressed even harder. Fred grew up knowing the weight of responsibility. To help his family, he worked in a local pea cannery for only a few cents an hour, and the work demanded long shifts that drained most grown men, let alone a boy. Even then, another part of him was growing. At Beaver Dam High School, he became a standout in football, baseball, and basketball, a 3-sport star who often carried the scoreboard and became a small-town hero among students who admired him as much for his talent as his quiet determination. School opened new paths for him, and his grades earned him a full scholarship to Carroll College in Waukesha. But college classrooms could not hold him for long. The call of music tugged at him every day, and soon he drifted away from lectures and textbooks to chase something much riskier. He joined local dance bands as a saxophone player, hoping music would be the door that life had kept shut for so long. At night, he studied at the Chicago Art Institute because he believed talent needed shape and training. By 1928, he took another step and moved to Los Angeles. There, he worked as a Hollywood extra for $10 a day, a small amount even during the Depression. He also brought his sick mother along, driving her to Los Angeles so she could receive better treatment. Even while chasing dreams, he carried his family with him. His only real connection to the entertainment world was his aunt, Fay Holderness, who was a vaudeville performer, but even she couldn't hand him an easy start. Those early years were built on effort, not luck, and each day shaped the grit he would need later. Music came back into his life with a clearer direction in March 1930, when he joined Gus Arnheim's Coconut Grove Orchestra. He was just 22. He played clarinet and tenor sax, and that same month he stepped behind a microphone to sing on a recording called All I Want Is Just One Girl, released as Victor 2222384. It was a rare vocal track for him. Most people focused on Bing Crosby, who was the rising star of the band, but Fred's voice was there too, tucked inside a recording that would later become part of jazz history. The session took place in Los Angeles, and these moments with the orchestra became his bridge to the East Coast and the stage lights of New York. He had never planned on acting, but music carried him toward opportunities he didn't see coming. Later that same year, 1930, opened another door. Fred was brought onto the Broadway revue Three's a Crowd at the Selwyn Theater. The show opened on October 15, 1930, and ran for 271 performances until June 6, 1931. He wasn't hired as an actor. He was just a musician with the California Collegians. But rehearsals changed everything when producers noticed the way he held himself on stage. They gave him a small acting role even though he had never acted before. It was tiny, almost easy to miss, yet the right people saw it. Casting directors remembered him, and slowly offers began to appear. This small step became his first real foothold in a world he never thought he would enter. Momentum followed him into 1933, when he joined the Broadway production of Roberta at the New Amsterdam Theater. The show opened on November 18, 1933, and ran for 295 performances until July 21, 1934. There he shared the stage with Bob Hope, George Murphy, and Sidney Greenstreet. Bob Hope's performance in that show made him a star, and Fred's role wasn't far behind in catching attention. Paramount Pictures signed both of them, and in 1934, they offered Fred a 7-year contract paying $350 per week. He wasn't special yet, just one more contract player, but the path had clearly shifted. Roberta wasn't just a show. It was the moment when the world finally turned toward him. Everything sped up in 1935. Fred MacMurray moved from a rising name to a star in a single burst. That year alone, he appeared in 7 films, something almost unheard of at the time. His big moment came with The Gilded Lily in March 1935, where he starred alongside Claudette Colbert. Audiences loved him, studios loved him, and suddenly, Paramount had a leading man. Later that same year, he appeared in Alice Adams with Katharine Hepburn in September, and Hands Across the Table with Carole Lombard in December. Each film brought him more attention, more praise, and more confidence from studio heads who saw him as reliable, charming, and box office gold. By the end of 1935, his name shined on theater marquees all over the country. His rise was so fast, it surprised even seasoned executives who were used to watching actors climb slowly over years of effort. Fred leaped ahead in just 12 months, and Hollywood began treating him like a sure thing. His success only grew. By 1943, his annual salary had reached $420,000. In today's money, it would be around $7 million. This made him the highest-paid actor in Hollywood and the 4th highest-paid person in the entire United States. While the average American worker made about $2,000 a year during World War II, Fred earned more than 200 times that amount. His films consistently brought in millions. Studios trusted him. Audiences loved him. And his contract with Paramount kept him at the top. The next year, 1944, he earned even more, reaching $439,000. Again, he became Hollywood's highest-paid actor. These numbers were shocking during wartime, a period when most families were struggling with rationing and shortages. Yet Fred's films like Double Indemnity and Above Suspicion kept drawing crowds, and studios were willing to pay him because every film with his name on it seemed destined for profit. Fred wasn't only an actor, he was a businessman who understood that fame can fade, but contracts can last. He negotiated profit-sharing deals long before most actors even dared to ask. Instead of taking a flat salary, he asked for a percentage of each movie's gross. This meant he earned money long after the films left theaters. Movies like Double Indemnity in 1944 and The Egg and I in 1947 became huge hits, and his share brought him income for years. Other actors noticed, studios noticed, and Fred quietly set a blueprint for how stars could build real wealth in Hollywood. World War II brought a different kind of attention. Fred MacMurray didn't serve in the military, and that decision drew criticism. He worked as an air raid warden in Brentwood and helped sell war bonds, doing what he could from home. But while stars like James Stewart and Clark Gable served overseas, Fred continued making movies and earning enormous salaries. People talked. Some questioned his choices. Still, his films were seen as morale boosters for audiences who needed escape during dark days. And he used his fame to promote bond drives and charity events. The debate around him showed the pressure celebrities faced during wartime and how their actions were watched more closely than ever. Even with the controversy, Fred remained a beloved figure whose work lifted spirits when people needed it most. Fred MacMurray met Lillian Lamont in 1934, when both were working on the Broadway musical Roberta, and something about the way she moved pulled him in quickly. Their romance started quietly, but it grew fast, and soon they were facing pressure from Hollywood because studios wanted MacMurray to look single for the fans. Instead of pulling apart, they came up with an unusual idea at the time. They announced a test engagement in 1934, telling reporters they wanted to see if their personalities could pull in a double harness before taking the final step. It sounded playful, but it also showed how careful they were about protecting what they had. Then June 19, 1936 arrived, and the two of them slipped away with MacMurray's mother, flew to Las Vegas, and married that same night. It stayed a secret so well that even studio officials spent the next day searching for MacMurray, not knowing he had already tied the knot. They returned to Hollywood that same day, carrying a quiet happiness that took time before anyone else learned about it. Lillian struggled with chronic kidney and heart issues, which meant pregnancy wasn't possible for her. So in 1940, they adopted their daughter, Susan, with the adoption completed formally in 1942. 4 years later, in 1946, they brought home 1.5-year-old Robert, and the house finally felt full. Even then, Lillian's health continued slipping. MacMurray later joked that his son Robert went the hippie route through the South Seas to find himself, trying to show how parenting carried its own share of surprises during that era. Still, the couple stayed steady, pouring everything into their kids, even as Lillian fought a long and exhausting battle with her health. What people didn't know was that Lillian was dealing with something even heavier. In a 2006 interview, her cousin revealed that Lillian suffered from bulimia. Her health crashed in the early 1950s, and she passed away in June 1953, only a short time after their 17th anniversary. The truth about her bulimia shocked fans and biographers because it revealed how much she had hidden behind her calm smile. As MacMurray carried all of this privately, Hollywood placed him in a role that almost broke the rest of his career. When he played Walter Neff in Double Indemnity in 1944, audiences didn't know what to make of him anymore. He had always been the cheerful romantic lead, the safe choice, the dependable one. Suddenly, he was a cold, calculating man plotting murder for insurance money. Before he took that part, big names like George Raft and Alan Ladd had already refused it because they worried it would destroy their image. Billy Wilder had to beg MacMurray to even consider it. MacMurray said he was terrified because he thought the role would ruin everything he had built. When the film came out, fans were stunned by the shift. Critics were shaken too, but something unusual happened. His performance turned into one of the most respected in film noir history. Years later, he said that the role almost ruined my career, but at the same time, it became his proof that he could do serious drama instead of just light comedy. What made things stranger was the reason he got that role in the first place. Paramount Pictures used it as a contract negotiation trick. At the time, MacMurray was renegotiating his salary, and the studio believed that if he played such a dark and risky character, he would flop at the box office and be forced to accept less money. They wanted to teach him a lesson. Instead, the plan backfired. The role became a hit, the critics praised him, and his bargaining power actually grew. The very role meant to bring him down ended up lifting him higher. Filming Double Indemnity came with its own pressure. MacMurray wasn't used to such heavy material, and Billy Wilder pushed him non-stop, demanding emotional depth and intensity that MacMurray had never been asked for before. He was nervous and unsure of himself. Barbara Stanwyck, who played Phyllis Dietrichson, felt the weight too, but her confidence helped balance him. In letters he wrote later, MacMurray admitted that Stanwyck's focus and calm kept him steady. Their chemistry on screen proved how much she lifted him during that difficult shoot. He said the experience changed him because it forced him into a place as an actor he never imagined reaching. But MacMurray didn't always connect smoothly with directors. His relationship with Preston Sturges became one of the most famously strained in old Hollywood. Sturges wrote in his autobiography that MacMurray was terrible, very cruel, and he meant it. Their tension came alive during the filming of Remember the Night in 1940. They clashed over tone, over line delivery, over nearly everything that shaped a scene. MacMurray, who was usually easygoing, found Sturges harsh and unbearable. When Sturges politely told him it had been a pleasure working with him, MacMurray replied that he wished he could say the same. After that, MacMurray made sure they never worked together again. It was rare in that era for a leading man to openly push back against a powerful director, which made the clash even more memorable. Working with Carole Lombard brought a completely different energy. Between 1935 and 1937, they starred in 4 films together. Lombard had a reputation for being fearless and funny, and MacMurray said she swore like a man, which always surprised him because she carried herself with such confidence and honesty. She would tease him by threatening to pluck his eyebrows to get him to loosen up on set. Her humor made the long hours feel lighter, and he always spoke fondly of her. Her death in a 1942 plane crash shook the entire industry, and MacMurray was one of the many who kept her memory alive by talking about the spark she brought to every scene. His dynamic with Barbara Stanwyck carried a different kind of intensity. MacMurray admitted that he fell in love with her. He said that every film they made together had one thing in common. He fell in love with her. They worked together in Remember the Night in 1940, Double Indemnity in 1944, The Moonlighter in 1953, and There's Always Tomorrow in 1956. Their roles captured the push and pull between them. In one film, he turned her in. In another, he killed her. In another, he left her. And in the last one, he pushed her over a waterfall. Their connection off-screen made the on-screen tension feel real, and he often said that working with her was thrilling because she was so strong and skilled. Claudette Colbert was another key figure in his career. He worked with her in 7 films, and their biggest success together came with The Egg and I in 1947. During the shoot, the hens on set laid more than 300 eggs. MacMurray and Colbert signed them and sold them at farmers' markets to raise money for the Braille Institute of America. It turned into one of the earliest celebrity charity efforts in Hollywood. The film became one of the biggest box office hits of 1947 and cemented their place as a beloved on-screen pair. Their working relationship lasted 14 years, and MacMurray later said they both simply knew when it was time to move on without bitterness. Fred MacMurray's life shifted in a deep and painful way after Lillian Lamont died on June 27, 1953. They had been married for 17 years, and she passed just 2 days after their anniversary. People close to them said it was a heart attack, but others whispered that kidney failure was the real cause. Those small whispers moved around Hollywood and created a cloud of rumors. MacMurray was left heartbroken, and for a while he moved through his days in a quiet haze. Yet before the year even ended, he appeared at a gay 90s party that John Wayne hosted on New Year's Eve 1953, and he wasn't alone. He arrived with June Haver. Their sudden closeness stunned people who expected him to stay in mourning much longer, and that surprise fed even more talk around town. June's own story added weight to the gossip. She had spent 8 months in a convent after her fiancé, Dr. John Duzick, died during a routine surgery in 1949. The loss sent her searching for something steady. That search took her into religious life, but eventually, she stepped away from the convent and drifted back into Hollywood. Her return alone raised eyebrows, And when she began seeing MacMurray so soon after his wife's death, the attention around them only grew stronger. Their bond deepened quickly, and they slipped away to marry on June 28, 1954, at the Ojai Valley Inn. They kept it quiet. They even used their friend Ray Cardillo's travel agency to hide their plans, letting the world believe the wedding would take place more than a month later. The secrecy made everything feel even more mysterious. The controversy didn't end there. June was a devoted Catholic, but the church would not allow a Catholic wedding because she had married musician Jimmy Zito in 1947 and divorced him soon after. To marry MacMurray, she had to renounce her faith. People talked about that decision for years. Some said she betrayed her beliefs for love, while others felt she was simply trying to build a new life. Either way, the marriage carried a mix of joy, secrecy, and scandal that Hollywood could not ignore. When MacMurray stepped into television with My Three Sons in 1960, he carried that same boldness into his contract. Before signing, he spoke with Robert Young from Father Knows Best, who warned him about the heavy workload. MacMurray listened carefully and decided he wasn't going to live like that. He used his star power to shape one of the most unusual deals in television. He would film all his scenes in about 65 non-consecutive days each year. That meant just 2 months of work for him, while the rest of the cast filmed nearly all year. Producers had to redesign the entire production around his schedule. It turned the show into a puzzle, and MacMurray became the centerpiece. The cast often acted opposite empty chairs or stand-ins because MacMurray's scenes were shot first in 2 big blocks. Writers had to create scripts that allowed his lines to be filmed months early. Some scenes were nothing more than broad monologues that editors could drop into episodes later. Guest stars sometimes had to return 9 months after their original shoot to finish their scenes, and child actors needed weekly haircuts to keep their appearance steady. MacMurray wore a toupee, which helped keep his image the same no matter how long the gap between shoots. The entire system was exhausting for the crew, but he never softened his terms. His schedule was set, and the production team had to work around it. This approach also carried real risks. One unexpected change could ruin an episode. When Dawn Lynn joined the cast as Dodie in the 1969 to 1970 season, her front teeth grew in unevenly during the break between MacMurray's blocks of filming. Matching her scenes with his became almost impossible. Still, MacMurray refused to adjust anything. His decision caused tension, but it changed the way big stars negotiated their future contracts. He had become a quiet pioneer in his own way. Behind the scenes, MacMurray kept building a different kind of empire. In 1941, he bought a 150-acre ranch in Sonoma County's Russian River Valley with cash from his acting career. The land dated back to the 1840s and was known for its natural richness. He raised 400 Aberdeen Angus cattle and even imported a prized bull named Pyros of Islip from Scotland in the 1950s. During World War II, the ranch sent surplus fruits and vegetables to the U.S. Army. MacMurray renovated old houses, built barns, and turned the ranch into a place where family life came alive. Years later, in 1996, the land was sold and transformed into a Pinot Noir vineyard, giving the ranch a new chapter and confirming that MacMurray had been a skilled businessman long before people realized it. He was just as active with real estate. In 1944, he bought the Bryson Apartment Hotel in Los Angeles for $600,000 using profits from Double Indemnity. The building had opened in 1912 at a cost of $750,000 and carried a long history of luxury. MacMurray held it for about 30 years. By the late 1940s, he even requested and won a tax reduction because he claimed the operating costs were too high. Alongside the Bryson, he owned 3 more apartment buildings, a knitting mill, and a cold storage business. He liked spreading his money across several industries, and that careful planning gave him financial stability for decades. Despite earning more than $420,000 a year at his peak, he became famous for being extremely frugal. On movie sets, he often arrived with hard-boiled eggs packed in a brown paper bag. People joked about it so often that the story followed him everywhere. There were tales about his tipping habits too. Some said he left nothing at all, which embarrassed people who dined with him. He didn't apologize for it. He saved money, he reinvested it, and he ignored Hollywood's love for big spending. Those habits helped him hold on to his wealth longer than most actors from his era. Even so, when a profile came out in 1977, people learned that his actual net worth was only $3 to $4 million. Rumors had claimed he was worth $75 to $100 million, and the truth surprised almost everyone. Hollywood imagined him as one of its richest men, but his fortune had always been modest compared to the image people created in their minds. His simple lifestyle had built a myth that didn't match the numbers. There were moments when public perception affected him in more serious ways. In 1961, while visiting Disneyland, a woman recognized him from the apartment and struck him with her purse. She was upset he had chosen an adult-themed role instead of something more family-friendly. MacMurray went home shaken and told his wife he was done playing characters like that. From that day forward, he focused on clean roles that fit the image people loved. It became a turning point in his career and showed how deeply audience expectations shaped his choices. As the years moved on, his health began to fall apart. He was diagnosed with throat cancer in the late 1970s and recovered, but it returned in 1987. Other problems followed: emphysema, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and then the stroke in December 1988 that left his right side paralyzed and his speech badly damaged. Most people would have stopped fighting, but MacMurray pushed through intense therapy until he regained almost 90% of his movement and voice. Friends admired that strength. They saw a man who refused to let his body decide the ending of his story. But time kept closing in. He eventually died of pneumonia on November 5, 1991, in Santa Monica, at age 83. Near the end of his career, he appeared in The Swarm in 1978, a movie filled with chaos. Irwin Allen directed it and tried to ride the wave of killer bee panic sweeping the decade. The film had a huge cast including Michael Caine, Catherine Ross, and Henry Fonda, but none of that saved it. They used an estimated 15 to 22 million bees. About 100 people worked just to manage them. Olivia de Havilland was even stung during filming. The script fell flat, and the movie became known as one of the worst of its era. MacMurray only worked 2 days on the film, but it stayed attached to his name as an odd little piece of trivia. In 1987, he received a rare honor. Disney named him its first Disney legend. The ceremony included a handprint impression, and even though his health had already begun to slip, he attended with quiet pride. Younger viewers mostly saw him as the gentle father from My Three Sons, while older film fans remembered him from Double Indemnity and other classics. The award helped tie together both sides of his legacy. It reminded Hollywood that he had shaped more than one generation of entertainment. And even though he spent his final years away from the spotlight, that moment ensured his name would not fade into silence.